Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. So, we have reached the first weekend in September, and I recently found that a number of my favorite film sites are actually celebrating Sci-fi September. I'm a huge science fiction fan, so this is totally my jam, and I decided we would go ahead and kind of follow along with that theme. This week, to kick things off, I found two titles that I think are actually perfect picks for people who don't necessarily love science fiction, but are still interested in participating. These two sci-fi titles absolutely are part of the genre, but definitely veer off of what I think of as more stereotypical sci-fi themes. They are fantastic. One is a BBC miniseries and the other is a film, and very different tonally, but I also think speak to audiences in a way that really makes you think. So as always, these picks are available to you entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And without any further ado, let's get to the recs. Okay, my first recommendation is available via our Canopy service, and that is 2022's Life After Life. So, Life After Life is a 4-episode BBC miniseries, and it is adapted from the Kate Atkinson novel of the same name. This is a thoroughly bingeable TV show. I know I watched all 4 episodes in succession, bang, 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 in one day, and I have no regrets. It's a lot of drama. It's a lot of things happening, and I was totally there for it. I really enjoyed this. I didn't even know that this had been made into a miniseries until I started looking for topics that would fit with today's theme, and I am so happy that I did. Just as a brief description of the basic storyline, we are initially introduced to our main character, Ursula Todd, in 1910, the moment she is born and the moment she dies. That same night, she is reborn, and we get to see her life go a little bit further. And in those moments, obviously, you realize this is not your typical linear story. We get to watch Ursula experience huge swaths of history and of her own little bits and pieces of stories, but we do it in that repeating storyline fashion. So think of this as a very dramatic Groundhog Day. We get to see her experience the world through World War I, World War II, the Spanish flu epidemic. We get to see her experience moments from multiple sides of any conflict. It is a whole lot of story in a very short amount of time. And so I did find myself on the edge of my seat a lot. The production work itself is top notch. I thought the cinematography was beautiful. The costumes are amazing. The setting, it was just very, very well put together. I also thought the cast was excellent. I was familiar with some of the actors already, but some of them I have never seen in anything. And I thought that they all did a really, really good job of playing off of one another. Some of these characters I don't think would have been half as solid if they had not been able to bounce off of one another so well. And again, it's one of those things, I always like finding new actors and actresses to add to my to watch list. And this was full of performers like that. I think my only I wouldn't even say big complaint, is that there were moments that felt almost over the line into melodrama, but that's the thing. You're dealing with topics that are so intense and so heavy. It's a very fine line between very dramatic and over dramatic, not through any fault of the acting or production side of things. I just think those kinds of stories are like, there's so much intensity. It's hard not to sometimes go beyond what you need to. Like, for a contemporary example, think of Grey's Anatomy. All the things that happened in that one hospital, right? Like, death, destruction, bombs, shootings, plane crashes, all of these things would never happen to the staffers of one thing, but they did because it makes good television. The storyline in Life After Life, this character is living during a period when these things all happened to all people. So really it was quite a dramatic time period to begin with. But yeah, that would be my only real complaint, that it's just a lot of stuff going on in a very short amount of time. One of my friends to whom I was recommending this, stopped me and asked, is this too much like a Groundhog Day? Am I going to be reminded of Groundhog Day? And while I would say there's a comparison in the concept of repeating days, that's a trope that's been around for a very long time, far before Bill Murray's movie. So it really doesn't have any connection other than that basic trope. It is beautifully dramatic. It is really, really well acted. And it is definitely something that I think will make you think long after you've watched it. There is almost an element of meta to this. So much of this storyline is about Ursula figuring out what the right decision is for each lifetime. And the show is asking us to ask, what is the right decision? What is ultimately the goal? And why does Ursula get to decide that? It's quite the philosophical conundrum, but it's interesting to continually ask yourself that while you're watching, what consequences each of these decisions has, what will happen or what could have happened. And, again, that's one of those things that I kept on coming back to through all 4 episodes. And I think that's something that would, be an element of interest to a lot of people. So Life After Life, I highly recommend it. If you liked the book, it is a very solid adaptation. Even if you haven't read the book, you don't need to. There's no context that you need outside of the miniseries. Acting is excellent. Production, costumes, music, all of it top notch. Just a really, really well put together miniseries and an absolute must watch. All right, my other pick for today is available via both our Canopy and Hoopla services, and that is 2023's Jules. So in Jules, we follow a gentleman named Milton. Milton is played by the fantastic Ben Kingsley, and he has lived his entire life in this very small, isolated town. It's a very quiet life. Quiet, quiet, quiet. Nothing ever happens. And then all of a sudden, a UFO crash lands in his backyard. Of course, he meets the alien or extraterrestrial who comes out of the UFO, and he has to figure out what to do with this whole situation in his day-to-day life. The extraterrestrial does not seem to be malevolent in any kind of way, but still, he crash landed in his backyard. So what does Milton do? He goes to city council and makes a complaint. So city council, of course, thinks he's crazy because he just said a UFO crash landed in his backyard. And of course, his daughter hears about the situation and also thinks there are some problems going on and is concerned about his health, mental deterioration, all of these things. And Milton's still trying to deal with his alien on his own. To make things even better, Milton is also dealing with his 2 very nosy neighbors, played by Harriet Sampson Harris, who is a really successful character actor. I promise if you watch this and you see her face, you'll have recognized her from other things. As well as Jane Curtin, also always fantastic. And so these 2 women suddenly invade his life because they feel, for whatever reason, very invested in this extraterrestrial. This extraterrestrial that one of them decides to name Jules, title, and the other one insists should be called Gary. No spoilers there. Anyway, these 3 are interacting with this alien. They're interacting with each other, and somehow their lives all start to twine together. And it's really interesting to see this movie that is on the surface about the humorous effect of an alien crash landing in some dude's backyard, when in fact you're actually covering so many other topics, and quite heavy topics at that. It is funny in a lot of parts, but it can get pretty dark pretty quickly as well. So yes, you are dealing with Jules, and what does Jules want? What does Jules need? After a while, how do you help Jules return to wherever Jules came from? Should you help Jules return? And beyond that science fiction aspect, you're also dealing with very serious questions about aging, questions about how the world perceives people who are aging, dementia, mental stability, senility, health, and just mortality in general. And there were a couple moments when I found myself really thinking about things that I don't generally think of, just because of this movie that I thought was just going to be this silly one-off. And, it was actually a lot more emotional than I was expecting. It actually reminded me quite a lot of Robot and Frank with Frank Langella. If you've never watched that, it is quite excellent as well. The expectation of this relationship between Milton and Jules, it becomes something really important to Milton. And I loved this slide into companionship, friendship, family, not just between Milton and Jules, but Milton and the other women who are suddenly in his life. Just as a trigger warning, there is a pet death in this that is actually quite affecting. So if that is something that you might have problems with, this might be a bit much for you. But it is just a brief moment. But was a very heavy topic within this. It was surprising how they fit that into the storyline. But again, aging happens for everyone and everything, and that is something that this covers. Once more, not a topic I thought we were going to hit when I first read the description for this. Again, if you are looking for something that is a bit funny, a bit sad, moving, will absolutely make you think, and is a little bit absurd, Jules is a really good pick. I was very surprised by how much I got out of watching this one, especially since I'd not heard about it at all before I really watched it. I mean, I'd seen like the movie poster pop up on the internet a couple of times, but never really registered for me. It wasn't one that I was like, have to watch. But yeah, I think this one is really, really great, even if you don't have any interest in science fiction. The alien storyline is, like a central hub, but for whatever reason, everything else matters as much, if not more. So it doesn't even really feel like a sci-fi story so much as a comedy drama. So yes, very highly recommended. Jules, available on both Canopy and on Hoopla. Okay, so those were my 2 picks for today's episode. If you have any recommendations for sci-fi films or series that are good for people who don't like science fiction, definitely recommend those below. Always looking for topics like that because I have a lot of friends who aren't sci-fi fans, but I want to kind of get them into the genre. Any film that you can recommend, pop there. It'll be awesome. If you have any recommendations for topics that you would like us to cover in the future, definitely recommend those as well. Always looking for help on that. As always, thank you so much for joining me. These both were real gems to uncover, and I'm looking forward to next week's episode as well. Once again, thanks so much for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye!